So, chapter 14 is all about Mendelian genetics. Since Mendel figured this out, the whole topic is named after him. Lately, we have realized, well, in the last 50 years, we have realized that there are other patterns of inheritance that are different than Mendelian genetics, but for many of our genes, Mendelian genetics is the pattern of inheritance, okay? So Mendel was an Austrian monk. He actually, like many of our famous scientists, struggled in school, didn't want to do what his parents wanted him to do, and finally found his niche, thankfully for civilization, for mankind. And he got freedom with being with the church to learn a lot. And he worked in the gardens at the monastery, which is very important because he was growing food for the community as well, and trading, and for feeding the other monks. And of course, growing food is genetics, right? Passing on traits that we want. Okay, so he discovered the basic principle of heredity, and his main model species, once again, like Nasonia for us in here, for the genetics labs, was the pea plant. And like all model species that are really good for learning with, he got a little lucky. And it has some very specific traits that allow it to be really useful in learning about heredity. So you can see one of his techniques is the plant, the flower, the reproductive organ for peas, have both sexes. So he's cutting off the anthers, which are the male, like a stem that's holding what? So the pollen, which are what kind of cells? Gametes, yeah. And then in the inside are the eggs. Hold on one sec. Yay, our Nasonia are here. Okay, so what we have here is the female reproductive organ is this pistil, they call it, and down in that range is where the eggs are. So he's separating, he's controlling what gametes can come in contact with other gametes. So then he's collecting pollen, uses a paintbrush, puts it on the stigma, the top part, where the pollen then will fertilize the eggs, and then the eggs grow into fruiting bodies, right? So those are individual pea plants. What do we call them? If we were to purchase those, what would we call those? Okay, so sometimes we get the whole pod that we purchase. Sometimes we purchase the individual peas. And now, instead of buying it from a grocery store, can you buy these things from other places? Where? What? Farmer's market, okay. But even beyond that, for a different use. If they were to dry out, what are they going to turn into? Thought I heard it. Seeds, right? Those are babies, okay? And so then they'll go dormant, and then we can plant them. You know, with the corn, do you think back when we worked with our corn seeds and cellular respiration? Commonly, I do that same activity with the peas also. Okay, now, many varieties have distinct heritable features or characters, so there's lots of synonyms. Those genes that are inherited then cause these particular traits. Now, mating of plants can be controlled, like you saw his method there. And each pea plant has sperm-producing organs. Those are the stamens. Egg-producing organs are called the carpels. That's the entire structure they call, which is made of the ovary and the pistil and the stigma. Okay, so we can cross-pollinate, which means we're going to do the fertilization, but they do that in nature also. What can help plants cross-pollinate? Bees. What else? Wind, non-moving, right? Mammals, fur. Okay? Okay, so then Mendel chose to track only those characters that varied in an either or manner. They were either white or they were purple. They were either taller versions or they were what he called dwarf versions. He used those varieties that were true breeding. So he noticed, yay, thank you. He noticed in the garden that whenever in this certain area, the peas were always white-petaled, for example. So we call them true breed or purebred because they were all basically clones of each other because peas normally do what? Not cross-pollinate, they self-pollinate, okay? And I'm going to pull our pea flower model out soon, and you can see that it's formed a function. The way they're formed, their shape easily allows them to self-pollinate. But Mendel was making hybrids by doing cross. Now, so vocab. The parents, when we first set up, so in here, we have parents. Okay? When we first set it up, the pea generation, the start of our experiments, are the parental generation. Now, if we're going to do hybrids, right, if we're going to cross two different traits together, those offspring would be called the F1 generation. It really means like, it doesn't stand for first. The one stands for first. It has to do with fidel, meaning like paternal, also padre, which all means like coming from the father. So that's your F generation. We cross those offspring, we've made a what generation? An F2 generation. So there is a nice overview of what he did. And what he found was purple was way more common in his F2 generation than white. He also noticed that when he did this cross, the first generation, he didn't get any, what? Yeah, he didn't get any white. What happened? And this is where we get this term in conversations you'll hear, like if your family's talking about these different traits. People say, oh, that trait skips a generation. See how it can skip a generation here? We were from purple, white, we have no white, but then we got white back. But it's not quite that easy as in, you know, coffee table conversations. But you do see it with Mendelian traits. And again, it always doesn't skip because you still have more odds that you're going to just stay purple, right? Okay, so here's his traits I want you to be familiar with. He looked at flower color. He looked at flower position. Now, real quick, stay with me so these words don't trip you up. Axial means that the flower is coming off from the sides of the stems, and terminal means it's at the very end of the stem. Okay, like a long red rose, long stem red rose. He looked at seed color, he looked at shape, seed shape, wrinkled versus round. Sometimes they call this smooth versus wrinkled. Doesn't matter, okay? Pod shape, check it out. Constricted, like back to those pea pods. You guys like those snow peas like that are in Asian food? Oh yeah, those constricted ones. And sometimes they don't say this inflated. Sometimes they call that smooth. Pod color. And then, like I said, the height. And he was seeing the same results for all these crosses, that one particular trait would be dominant over the other. Okay, now, in modern times, we know where these genes are located on the what? What are those things called? Chromosomes. So this is a gene map. So we know where flower color is. So here's from the purple parent, here's from the white parent. They were purebred, so they can only give away a white, right? They originally had two. They were diploid, right? Okay, so then again, reviewing what last chapter was all about here. So you inherit one chromosome from each of your parents for each of the chromosome pairs. So two alleles. So when we use the word allele, we're talking about the gene that where it is on the particular chromosome. So you get 2 alleles because we're diploid. We got 1 chromosome from mom, 1 chromosome from dad. They could be the exact same allele, right, if they had the same traits, or they could be different. If they have the same allele, it's homozygous. If they have like 1 purple one, 1 white one like we saw, that's heterozygous. Hetero means what? Different. Okay, so I'm almost done, you guys. The third concept is that if the 2 alleles at a different locus, then one, the dominant allele, determines the organism's appearance, and the other, the recessive allele, has no noticeable effect. Now, you have been taught in the past, one is dominant, one is stronger than the other one outweighs that particular trait. Normally, if you think about it, it's just the characteristics. If you put purple color with white color, you're mostly going to see what? Purple. So let's think about these traits. It's not like one allele is better than the other necessarily. It's not that one allele is stronger than the other. Normally, it's just how they come together. Okay? Okay, so let's stop right there.